Hey, what is up, mortals? It is JSatwekar here with a new video for you. Welcome to part 4 of What If Deku Had a Teleportation Quirk. I just wanted to greet you guys by saying, sit back and relax, you're in for a treat. So we begin. Once the shock wore off, the students looked at each other nervously. The threat of expulsion was frightening, given UA's history of not sticking to tradition. Both Bakugo and Midoriya looked at each other nervously. The green-haired boy was terrified. However, he remembered what Night Eye had said. There wasn't much he could do about the threat other than try his best. Isn't that extreme, sir? Everyone tried extremely hard to get here, Uraraka said, with a slight amount of fear in her voice.
Life isn't fair. It's the job of a hero to correct that unfairness in the world. The physical exam is meant to reveal how much potential you have as a hero,
Aizawa said in a monotone voice as he stared his class down.
You'll have to complete 8 tests before I can gauge how much potential each of you has.
The sleep-deprived teacher studied his students. The first physical test he had the class complete was the 50-meter dash. The first student Aizawa called up was the blue-haired boy. Ida waited at the starting line for the teacher to start the test. It took him 3 seconds to reach the end of the track. Nothing of note happened until it was Izuku's turn. The green-haired boy took a deep breath as he activated his quirk. The moment the homeroom teacher said go, a bubble of space formed around Izuku. The space behind him expanded as he compressed the area in front of him. Everyone watched in shock as the emerald-eyed boy simply appeared on the other side of the track. Aizawa examined his stopwatch for a moment. The goal of the test was to see how the students used their quirks to improve their mobility. However, he wanted to see how fast this kid could go without using his quirk.
Midoriya, you completed the sprint in 0.2 seconds, but I want you to do it again without using your quirk,
the teacher said flatly. Yes, sir, Midoriya said in shock. The green-haired boy teleported back to the starting line. Once there, he waited for the signal to run. As soon as the teacher gave the signal, Izuku began to run. While he was running, he realized the empty nature of the threat. Class 1A's homeroom teacher's point was that they might not be able to use their quirks in every situation they would face. The teacher's true goal was to push the students to try their hardest. After that, he relaxed and put his all into the tests. Despite Midoriya's focus, there wasn't much he could do with his quirk when it came to the grip strength test. For the standing long jump, the green-haired boy used his quirk to clear the sandbox by giving himself a boost in height and distance as he traveled off his jump. The other tests flew by as Izuku decided not to use his quirk for them. The final test that everyone had to complete was the ball throw. The brown-haired girl that he had spoken to earlier was getting ready to throw the ball. He watched as Uraraka activated her quirk on the baseball as she threw it. The ball traveled through the air normally for a couple of meters before it started to curve upward. Aizawa turned his device to the class so they could see how far the ball traveled. The class stared as it showed the infinity symbol on it. When it finally came time for the emerald-eyed boy to throw the ball, he considered what he had observed from the other students. As he got into position, he started to formulate a plan to throw the ball. Izuku wanted to minimize the amount of energy he used when he used his quirk. As he activated his quirk, the green-haired boy imagined a bubble of space just large enough to hold the ball. As he threw the ball, Midoriya decided to throw the ball as far as he could. As he released the ball, it simply vanished into thin air. While the rest of the classmates wondered where the ball went, Aizawa watched the number on his device suddenly change. After the initial jump, the ball continued for a bit before the numbers stopped. The ball traveled 810 meters from the location from which it had been thrown. For a moment, the students in Class 1A thought they saw a smile on their homeroom teacher's face. However, before they could talk to each other about it, the teacher stared at his students. Everyone swallowed hard as they looked at the teacher, and then looked around nervously since no one wanted to end up getting expelled.
The bottom 5 students will receive extra training. However, I've decided not to expel anyone because everyone here displayed potential,
Aizawa said in a monotone voice as he examined his students.
I reserve the right to expel any student in Class 1A whose potential drops to 0. It is highly irresponsible of a hero to try and save everyone without a team. Teamwork is an important part of being a hero.
The teacher displayed the results for every student to see. It didn't take Izuku long to find out that he had barely beaten his blonde-haired friend to third place. As Class 1A started to head back to their assigned classroom, their teacher walked over to the side of the building where a tall man with blonde hair was standing. The black-haired teacher tapped his screen as he briefly examined the towering figure in front of him. He knew why the newest teacher at UA was observing his class from a distance.
It's too early in the semester to pick a favorite student. What do you want anyway?
Aizawa said dryly, since he knew All Might was looking for a student who represented what it meant to be a true hero.
Everyone in the class has the potential to be a true hero. I would recommend that you teach them that popularity isn't the most important aspect of being a pro hero.
Isn't it our job to teach them what it means to be true heroes?
All Might asked.
Although popularity isn't the most important aspect of being a hero, it is still a very important part. The media is one way that society can see how we heroes operate when we are on patrol.
When he didn't receive a reply, he asked a second question.
Aizawa, did any student catch your eye?
That's where we disagree. I think the media just gets in the way of us saving lives. A few of the students did catch my eye.
The tired-looking teacher bluntly responded as he turned to walk away.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to get to my class. I highly doubt the students will remain in their seats for long if I'm not there.
For the students, the rest of the day flew by without incident. However, everyone was weary of their homeroom teacher. It seemed as if he had every intention of expelling someone if they fell below his standard. The 5 students who had scored the lowest grades were especially terrified. Finally, when they were dismissed from their class, they were able to discuss whether or not Aizawa was serious when he said he would expel any student who didn't show potential. I don't think the teacher was serious when he made that threat. I think his goal was to motivate us to try our best. Izuku nervously stuttered. Ka-chan, do you really think UA would just let a teacher expel students like that? After all, the entrance exam was hard enough.
You have a point, nerd. But I don't like the fact that the teacher has the ability to threaten us like that.
Katsuki growled in frustration.
Sure, life isn't fair. But isn't it his job as our teacher to prepare us for the real world? I can't accept the fact that we could get expelled from UA just because one teacher thinks we have no potential.
The 2 friends stared at each other for a few seconds. Neither of them would admit how truly terrifying the threat of expulsion was. The threat hung in the air almost as if their homeroom teacher, who was sleeping in the left corner of the classroom, would suddenly wake up and decide to expel them. Thankfully, the last bell of the school day rang and broke the silence. Relief was evident on every student's face as they started to pack up their things and headed out. The class continued to talk amongst themselves as they left the room. Izuku didn't waste any time leaving the room. He wanted to be as far away from the suffocating presence of Class 1A's homeroom teacher as possible. As they were walking away from the building, 2 of their classmates came running up to them. One was a blue-haired boy with glasses, and the other was a girl with brown hair. It annoyed Bakugo that a few of his classmates had decided to walk with them as they left school. He was going to have a hard enough time making sure his best friend didn't warp away, without also having to be part of a conversation as well.
What do you think of our homeroom teacher? I can't believe the man would do something so unheroic.
Ida grumbled as he waved his right hand up and down repeatedly.
I fail to see what we could learn from the stress he put us through today. How are we supposed to become great heroes if we are busy trying not to get expelled?
I don't think he intends to expel anyone. I think his goal is to try and push us to go plus ultra, Uraraka said, sounding happy as she bounced in the balls of her feet. Besides, none of us were at the bottom of the list, so we don't have to worry about the threat. Why don't we introduce ourselves to each other, since Aizawa prevented us from doing that in class? I'm Izuku Midoriya, but Ka-chan likes to call me Ghost. Don't let his attitude fool you. He does care about what happens to other people, Midoriya said nervously as he looked at the other 2 students. And I agree, I don't think the threat was real. Like you, I think his goal was to motivate us to try our best. I can picture him saying that it was a logical ruse.
My name is Katsuki Bakugo, and Ghost is wrong about one thing. I'm only nice to my friends. Everyone else is just an extra who better not get in my way.
Bakugo grumbled in frustration at the fact that he was talking to some of his classmates.
Whether or not the threat is real, we should still give it our all, so we don't have to find out.
Agreed. I am Tenya Ida, and I hope we can be friends. Both of you performed extremely well during the physical exam that Aizawa gave us.
Ida said pleasantly as he introduced himself properly to his classmates.
I hope we can work together to grow as heroes. I find it interesting that the teacher would focus on logic so much, and yet he threatened us with expulsion. Isn't it his job to instruct us on how to be proper heroes?
Oi, Ghost. Now that we have some free time, you might as well start eating your snacks. You know what happens if you don't eat your snacks.
The blonde-haired boy growled at his friend.
I'm Ochako Uraraka. How come Bakugo calls you Ghost? It's an interesting hero name,
the brown-haired girl said thoughtfully as she considered the nickname.
You do make things disappear and reappear in surprising locations. I can't believe how powerful your quirks are.
I call him Ghost because he has a nasty habit of getting distracted by something, and then disappears because he uses his quirk without thinking. It's also my way of acknowledging just how hard it is to land a blow on the nerd.
Katsuki growled in annoyance at someone questioning why he did something.
I wonder what kind of quirk our teacher has. He seemed familiar, so I'm going to look him up when I get home.
Izuku started to mutter to himself as he ate one of his strawberries.
I really want to add our homeroom teacher to my journal because it might prove useful to have information on him. It wouldn't surprise me if we end up having to fight our teachers as a part of our final exam.
Bakugo noticed a faint warping of space around his friend. A few small explosions were released from his right hand as he swung his arm over his friend's shoulder. While he was pleased to see that his friend was being his usual nerdy self when talking about heroes, Katsuki didn't want to have to spend hours searching for his friend if he warped away. He made sure that he kept the explosions weak enough that they wouldn't hurt anyone nearby. However, he made sure the explosions were strong enough to disrupt the space from warping around his friend.
Ghost, how many times do the police have to warn you about using your quirk in public? Do you have any idea how inconvenient it is for people to go around searching for you?
Katsuki growled as he moved his right hand closer to his friend's face.
This is getting ridiculous already. Nerd, you need to show some self-control. You won't become a hero if you lack self-control.
It took a few more moments for Izuku to realize that he had started to mutter to himself again. As he focused on the world around him, a faint sound of explosions caught his attention. At first, the green-haired boy couldn't figure out where it was coming from, until he noticed his blonde-haired friend's right hand. A series of small explosions were being produced. For a few more moments, Midoriya stared at the explosions in confusion. Finally, it dawned on him that he was using his quirk without realizing it. The emerald-eyed boy quickly deactivated his quirk as he looked around to make sure he hadn't teleported anywhere. Then he noticed that Ida was staring at him intently. Uraraka was simply looking at him and Bakugo in confusion as she watched the two of them interact. It embarrassed him to no end that he almost used his quirk in public.
Bakugo, you shouldn't be so disrespectful to a friend of yours, especially since you were also using your quirk in public. Everyone slips up from time to time. Besides, your response is a complete overreaction to the situation at hand.
Ida started to scold the way Bakugo handled the situation.
A hero has to be able to understand the shortcomings of his fellow person. Otherwise, he won't be a good hero. With that being said, Midoriya, it is extremely irresponsible of you to use your quirk in public. A hero must set a good example for people to follow.
At first, his three classmates stared at him before they broke out laughing. Ida looked at his classmates in confusion. He hadn't been expecting them to laugh in response to what he said. After a few minutes, his green-haired companion was able to control his laughter enough to tell Ida what they found so funny.
Ida, you sounded like a teacher for a moment there. It was almost like you were translating the cryptic lessons that Aizawa was giving us,
Izuku said as he continued to laugh.
It seems you've already started learning the lessons that our homeroom teacher wanted us to learn.
Ida simply shook his head in disbelief as his classmate continued laughing. It seemed that his friends had found his comments funny, despite the meaning behind them. He waved goodbye to his new friends as he started to head towards his house. Uraraka was the next one to leave the group as she headed home. Bakugo ended up walking Midoriya to his apartment as they started to discuss what they might learn in their hero studies course. When they arrived at school the following day, the students of Class 1A were excited because their last class was being taught by the symbol of peace. As a result, it seemed as if all the other classes dragged on. For Izuku, the class would be a chance to show All Might just how much he had improved. As he flipped through his notebook, he wondered what kind of lesson the #1 hero had prepared for them. The rest of the class was just as excited. No one could stay seated in their assigned seats. Everyone spent the time they had between their classes discussing what they expected from the lesson. Even Bakugo seemed to have an animated discussion with the student that had red hair. This was the course that everyone was the most excited for. It was the first step they would be taking on their way to becoming pro-heroes. Ida walked over to Izuku when he saw the green-haired boy flipping through his notebook.
Midoriya, what kind of lesson do you think All Might's going to have prepared for us? He is the symbol of peace, after all. He must have a few pieces of wisdom that will help us become pro-heroes.
Ida thoughtfully said as he considered what the #1 hero would have prepared for a lesson.
It must have something to do with what he has experienced as a hero. He's resolved the most situations in his career compared to almost all other pro-heroes. I wonder why he's been less active as a pro-hero as of late.
I think his first lesson plan will have something to do with his favorite quote. All Might keeps saying that the smart villains will stick to the shadows, where justice can't reach them.
Izuku said as he considered what kind of lesson All Might had prepared for them.
I think he's going to spend the lesson going over some of the basic information about being a hero.
The bell rang, signaling that it was time for their last class of the day to begin. Everyone quickly sat in their assigned seats and waited patiently for All Might to arrive. Despite their excitement, the entire class waited in silence. The door started to shake as it was opened by the #1 hero in the world. In a boastful manner, the symbol of peace entered the room with a smile on his face.
I am entering the classroom like a normal person,
All Might said with a smile on his face as he made a showy entrance.
Today, we will be doing some combat training. The goal of today's class is to help everyone identify their weaknesses so that they know where to focus their training. We will also focus on the most common type of interactions heroes have with villains.
The blonde-haired hero pressed a button on a remote that he had in his hand. Part of the back wall of the classroom shifted silently, revealing a shelf lined with suitcases. It took the class a moment to realize that All Might was looking at something in the back of the classroom, and they all turned in their seats to see what it was. The students looked at each other in confusion as they returned their attention to the symbol of peace.
I want everyone to get into their hero costumes and meet me at Ground Beta. Today, we will have a battle trial,
the symbol of peace said calmly as he addressed the class.
There are suitcases in the back of the classroom. Each suitcase contains a hero costume that the support department made for you. The support department tried their best to meet the specification that you requested.
The class started to talk excitedly amongst themselves as they went to the back of the classroom. Izuku was excited to see how the support department at UA improved on the costume that they had designed. The prospect of battling one of his classmates got his adrenaline pumping. Midoriya couldn't wait to see how his classmates used their quirks in battle. When he looked over at his friend Katsuki, he noticed his friend's usual predatory smile. It seemed as if the green-haired boy wasn't the only one ready to fight his classmates. 30 minutes later, Izuku managed to make it to Ground Beta. Even though it served no purpose, he kept checking to make sure that the high-energy snacks he had in a special pouch on his hero costume were still there. The rest of his classmates slowly arrived at Ground Beta. Finally, when all of the students were assembled, a large cloud of dust blinded the class as something large and heavy landed in front of them.
Now that everyone is here, I will divide you into teams of 2. For this exercise, half of the teams will be heroes, and the other teams will be villains.
All Might happily said as he quickly set a table down on the ground.
While it is true that most recorded villain fights happen out in the open, most heroes encounter villains in the shadows, where the law doesn't reach them. In the combat training, the hero team will have 2 objectives that they must complete in order to win. The first one is to capture the villain team with the white capture tape. The second objective is to defuse the bomb. In this exercise, only one of the heroes on the team needs to touch the bomb to defuse it. The villain team will also have 2 objectives to win. They can either capture the hero team in the white capture tape, or they can run the clock down so the bomb detonates.
The students quickly erupted into cheers at the thought of doing something related to becoming heroes. As the dust finally cleared, the students saw 2 containers resting on the table. One was labeled Hero Team, and the other was labeled Villain Team. To the left of both containers, there was a sheet of paper that identified the pairings. The first Hero Team was identified by the letter A, and it consisted of Midoriya and Uraraka. The first Villain Team used the letter D, and it consisted of Bakugo and Ida.
Both teams will get 10 minutes to prepare before the simulation begins. The Hero Team will also get a blueprint of the building that they are going to enter.
The symbol of peace said calmly as he addressed the class.
The Villain Team will decide where they want their bomb to be placed. The villains will also get time to plan out how they want to protect the bomb. The heroes will use the time to plan how they will get to the bomb and defuse it. Remember to go plus ultra during this exercise.
All Might reached his left hand into the hero container and grabbed a ball. At the same time, he reached his right hand into the villain container and grabbed a ball. He pulled his hands out of the container at the same time. The ball in his left hand had the letter A on it. In his right hand, the ball had the letter D on it. Both Bakugo and Midoriya looked at each other and smiled. The 2 of them were happy that they would be battling each other. It was a chance to see how much stronger the other one had become since they started training. It was also a chance for one of them to take the lead in their rivalry. Because they would be fighting each other, they would only have to worry about 2 unfamiliar quirks instead of 3. Thank you all for indulging yourselves in this story thus far. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. Firstly, we've got a second channel called Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive goes deep into the facts and lore of a wide variety of anime. It's sure to expand your weeb knowledge for all kinds of series, guaranteed. On top of that, we have a third channel called We the Celestials Naruto What Ifs. It's what we do on this channel already, but in the vast world and lore of Naruto. Go check it out if you're in the mood for some jutsu action. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. Lastly, if you're interested in what we do here at We the Celestials, then I would like to extend out an invitation to join the team. The only caveat being we only accept members 16 years and up to join our crew. You can sign up for whichever category fulfills your interests by joining the recruitment Discord using the link in the description below. Our Discord is an all-around fantastic place to be, whether you're a fan or looking to join our band of misfits. We're always looking for members to join us. Well, that's it from us for today's video, so thank you all for watching and have a great day.